So recently on the channel, I asked you to take a pledge. I asked you to take an oath that we are going to bring awareness to a Dreamcast Mini and a Sega Saturn Mini, because it seems like from a recent interview that Sega wants to do this. They want to make these systems. It's just they're hesitant because they don't know if they can do it, and they don't know if there is a market for it. I think it's clear as day that there is indeed a market for it. That video, like I said, was going to be very successful. Guess what? That video was successful on the channel. People are excited for stuff like this. So we need to keep badgering Sega, being like, hey, are you working on the Dreamcast Mini? Are you working on the Saturn Mini? Are you working on bringing these games back? Because that's a whole nother subsection of a conversation that we're having. Sega, for whatever reason, only believes that people are interested in their back catalog when it involves the Sega Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, they haven't really tried to do much with the other stuff. Some games were available on Xbox Live Arcade. There was that Dreamcast collection that had, you know, some interesting titles on it. They released some AM2 arcade titles like Daytona USA, Virtua Fighter 2, all that sort of stuff. But that was kind of in the infancy of online console stuff where you were purchasing stuff on a console. But Sega is sitting on a treasure trove of various franchises, and we all want to see some of these franchises come back. Sega thinks we don't. Sega thinks we're not going to support these, but I mean, we are. There's a diehard Sega audience that still exists today. There's a diehard contingency of people that want to see some of these franchises brought back. Well, we have a new rumor today from Shipashal Nick, who I don't think he's a big fan of me. One time I tweeted at him and he was like, how did you see this tweet? You don't follow me? And I was like, I don't know, man. Maybe a friend of mine sent it, because I thought it was kind of ridiculous. But he was on the Xbox Era podcast, which of course has the homie Randall Thor, one of the few Xbox voices that I think does a good job of not getting into overly fanboy stuff. And Mr. Nick, who we're going to call him Nick for this show, said some interesting things about some properties from Sega coming back. Probably not ones they're thinking of. So I'll have a link to the Xbox Era podcast in the description box down below so you can listen to it or watch it. But basically, he said that Sega is planning on bringing back both Altered Beast and Gunstar Hero franchises. Nick says some of the franchises that Sega is looking to revive include both Altered Beast and Gunstar Heroes. His source didn't tell him what shape it would take, though: a remake, a sequel, etc. Now, these are two very interesting titles, because I feel like they're kind of polar opposites of what Sega is all about. Let's talk about Gunstar Heroes first. I actually had to look this up, because I knew that Treasure developed Gunstar Heroes, but it seems like Sega actually owns the IP of Gunstar Heroes. Gunstar Heroes isn't really a franchise, because there's one game. There was Gunstar Heroes. So, like, obviously this is a very well-received Sega Genesis game. Tons of cool effects that were done in this game that, you know, that people thought couldn't have been done on the system, like rotating, you know, sprites and stuff like that. Some polygonal-looking characters. A great run-and-gun style game in vein of games like Contra. It's almost like a horizontal shoot 'em up with platforming, if that sort of makes sense. It's available on Nintendo Switch Online as well, so if you've never played Gunstar Heroes, that's a great way to play it. The only sort of reiterations that we've gotten of Gunstar Heroes was a release on the Game Boy Advance, and then they did the 3D classics on the Nintendo 3DS of Gunstar Heroes, but they never made like a Gunstar Heroes 2 or a Gunstar Heroes prequel or anything like that. It was a one and done game. Altered Beast sucks. I'm sorry if you disagree with that. I'm sorry, but the game sucks. Wise from your grave. Like, the arcade version is tolerable, but it's a product of the times. I don't think if you give a kid Altered Beast, they're going to be like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is a fun retro game. No, there's so many better games out there. And once again, Altered Beast franchise, like, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure that there was the first Altered Beast game, and then there was like a weird 3D spin-off I don't know. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like there was. But once again, this isn't really a quote-unquote franchise. And, you know, Altered Beast, I think it has an interesting name. You know, there is a little bit of a pedigree alongside of it. It was the pack-in game for the Sega Genesis Model 1 originally before, you know, Sonic bursted onto the scene. So there is some nostalgia for it. But these two franchises, and I use the term franchise very loosely, this to me, no disrespect to Nick, but this to me just feels like throwing stuff on the wall and seeing what sticks. Because, like, I don't know. I like, what market research have you done? Because I could think of a million other franchises from Sega that would probably be more impactful, that people would probably be more excited for, and that people would probably be more receptive towards. You know, stuff like a new Virtua Fighter, although we did have the Virtua Fighter on PlayStation 4, Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate. You know, it was a great game, but like a new Virtua Fighter, a new Daytona, a new Skies of Arcadia, like we could go on and on about this. It just seems to me like these are two franchises that, you know, what are you going to do with them? Because Gunstar Heroes was attractive because of the fact that it was a side-scrolling game. It was a game that pushed the Sega Genesis to its limits in terms of things like visuals and stuff like that. But are you going to butcher that and make it a weird 3D game or something like that? You know, what's the scale? What's the scope of this project? Altered Beast, I guess the gameplay loop would be you're a person and you go around kicking, and then you become you become a monster, or like a little werewolf thing, and you end up like changing. Like I don't see how these two franchises would really fare in the modern era, even in terms of a remake. Like, what are you going to do to Gunstar Heroes to make it better? Make it HD? Like, okay, like, I guess you could do that. Altered Beast. What in God's name are you going to do to that? Because Altered Beast sucks. I don't know. These just seem like two weird titles to choose if I'm Sega. You know, these feel like titles that the risk is going to be higher with games like these, more so than other classic franchises that at least have had some representation, you know, in the modern era. I get it. You know, not everything is Sonic. Not everything in their mind is Sega Genesis. And these are, you know, franchises that do have a fan base, but I'm not quite sure how impactful these would be. I'm not quite sure just how big of a splash that would make in the marketplace. And I feel like that's what Sega is looking to do, pending the scope of these things. If they're just re-releases for modern platforms, obviously that's not a big deal, but these games have been re-released. You know, I'm pretty sure you can get these on Steam and, you know, all these various Sega Genesis collections, because once again, two Sega Genesis franchises, because that's all Sega believes in. But we're going to prove them wrong, folks. We're going to prove them wrong with the Sega Genesis. I mean, even I'm programmed. The Sega Saturn Mini and the Sega Dreamcast Mini. So let me know in the comment section down below. Would you be excited for this? Like, how would you see these being done? Because I feel like Gunstar Heroes are just going to mess it up. And Altered Beast, like, I don't know. I just don't care. I just don't. And I know there's going to be 40-year-old men in the comments section, 40 plus, because that game, you know, you kind of had to be a little bit older for that. So like 45-year-old men, just Altered Beast is the greatest game ever. Cool. I'm glad you like it. I don't. It's pretty much on the level of Q*bert for me. I don't understand why people are attracted to it. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Make sure you go check out the Sega Dreamcast, Sega Mini video as well, or Sega Saturn Mini video as well. Be sure to share that around. Bother Sega, because that's how we're going to get things done. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.